So a while back we took a look at 10 games that were like Smash Bros for PC and other consoles. It seemed like a lot of you guys liked that video, so I'm back again today with 10 more games inspired by Super Smash Bros. Some of these might not follow the Smash formula to a T, but I feel like they capture that spirit. They'll give you those Smash vibes for sure. Check them out. First up we have Shovel Knight Showdown. Everybody knows and loves Shovel Knight, but unless you've played all the games in the treasure trove or checked out all the games individually, then you might not know that this one exists. It is a platform fighter, much like Smash Bros, and it's available on its own for about $10 US, but it also is included in the treasure trove. So if you have that game, then you already have this game. So it's a platform fighter for up to 4 players locally. You start out with 8 characters from the Shovel Knight franchise, but you can unlock a whole bunch of others throughout the game. The game plays a lot like Shovel Knight. Each character has their own abilities and weapons and kind of playstyles. It's not as deep as something like Smash Bros, but it is a ton of fun. And yeah, you have several different attacks and abilities as each character. You also have these floating items that appear and you can grab them and they kind of do funky things to the environment or the gameplay. There are several different game modes in here, but for the most part they all involve either knocking out your opponents or collecting gems that spawn randomly on the stage. So you're all fighting each other while trying to collect all the gems. You can also knock each other out and kind of steal a gem from your opponents. It's a ton of fun. There's also a single player story mode and each character has their own kind of story and path. You get those cool little cutscenes and get some more of the Shovel Knight lore. Very cool stuff, man. I mean, I'm a big fan of Shovel Knight, and if you are too, I think you'll love this game. Next up we have Runbow. This game's been out for a while. I feel like it's been on every single platform for the past couple generations of consoles. But with all that being said, I think it's still pretty underrated. This one has a few different types of game modes. One of them is a standard kind of deathmatch, which is the most Smash-like mode there is, but there's also a race, which feels a little bit more like speedrunners, where you're racing to get to the end of the level, and also you're fighting with your opponents at the same time. There's also like a King of the Hill mode, but the big gimmick of this whole game that is present in all the game modes is that you have this rainbow colored background that is constantly changing, and all the platforms and pieces of the level are colored different colors. So as the background's changing, if it becomes the same color as a certain platform, that platform disappears and you can fall to your death. So in addition to paying attention to your opponents and things, you also have to pay attention to your environment and the colors that are constantly changing. And it's pretty crazy, it's pretty challenging, pretty hectic. Not the deepest fighting system, but again, this one kind of focuses a little bit more on the platforming, I think. You got a big roster of characters. It has, I think, 19 cameo characters from other indie games. So you have Shantae, you have Gunvolt, you have Lilac, you have SteamWorld characters and Guacamelee characters, and all these different characters from other games. I think Shovel Knight's in this one too. Very cool game though. It has tons of levels, tons of game modes, and it supports up to 9 players both online and offline. The single player mode, they boast about it having 140 levels, but to be honest, I didn't find the single player mode to be very fun. This is really a game that you want to play with other people. I think if you can get some buddies together, you can have a really good time with this one. Definitely check it out. Alright, next up we have Clodhoppers. This is actually a free-to-play game in early access, and you can see it has a very distinctive style to it. All the graphics in this game were all made with clay models being captured and kind of digitized for that really authentic claymation look. So you play as a bunch of old rednecks pretty much in the country, and yeah, it plays a bit like Smash Bros. You're duking it out, you're jumping on platforms, climbing up things. There's a bunch of weapon drops to pick up, a lot of guns, a lot of ranged weapons, so that might be a little bit different. There's a lot more throwing and just shooting. Pretty simple gameplay, but also very fun to just pick up and play. There's a lot of customization options. You can customize the look of your character with so many different options. Really make the old version of you or anything else you want to make. I thought it was pretty impressive. Apparently, a lot of these kind of customization cosmetic items might go premium in the future. You might have to pay for that stuff in the future once this game is out of early access. So The developers are saying, get the game now, add it to your Steam account, and you'll be able to keep all that stuff for free. Definitely check it out. My only gripe here is that there's no single player. This is really only for multiplayer, and there was nobody online. But I was able to get my daughter to play with me for a few minutes to capture this footage. Pretty fun game. I think you'd have a lot of fun with this with some friends. Again, it's a free game, 1 to 8 players locally and online. Pick it up, tell your friends to get on it, and check it out. Alright, next up we have SkyScrappers. This is an interesting one. I thought it was pretty fun. So this is technically a platform fighter, but it has a bit of a gimmick to it. You are fighting each other while you're scaling this building that's apparently collapsing. You have all these beams and objects and debris slowly falling from the top of this building, and you're trying to get to the top of the building before your opponents, or simply outlast them. Those are the two ways to win. You either be the last one alive, or you reach the top of the building first. It's a very basic game in terms of gameplay. You pretty much run, you jump, you slash with your sword. There are a couple of other tricks you can pull off though too. One of them is like a ground landing where you do this ground attack. I never really could pull it off myself. You also have a special meter where you can pull off a couple of special attacks once the meter is filled up. And then you can kind of hit certain falling objects into your opponents. Very simple game, but pretty fun and pretty unique. My only gripe here is the lack of content. There's only like 4 characters and 4 stages, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a pretty cheap game. You can get it for around a few bucks on sale. Definitely a good time to have with friends. You can also play single player, which I had fun with for a little while as well. I don't think a lot of people know about this game, so check it out, SkyScrappers. Next up is Domiverse. Domiverse? I honestly don't know. This is another free-to-play game though. It wasn't always free, but the game's been out for a while and I think sales had slowed down, so they're like, hey, you have this game for free. Don't mind if I do. And if you want to support the developers, you can buy the soundtrack for a few bucks. So this is one you can play up to 4 players locally. It's a very odd looking game. It's very retro looking, very pixelated. Has some very strange looking characters. You got this little guy who looks like Patrick Star. You got a little robot. All kinds of really funky looking characters. And each character feels very different. They all have just a couple of different types of attacks and abilities. I don't know how balanced it is, but they all feel very different. There's a nice single player campaign that even has some mini games like break the target levels, just like in Smash. Or you can just jump into a 4-player match with other humans and bots. The game's a little rough around the edges for sure, but it's free and I think there's some fun to be had with it, especially with some friends. Alright, next up we have Skyhook. This is a platform fighter where you fight with grappling hooks. You can use your grappling hooks to swing around the map and also to grab opponents, and it's really like a one-hit kill situation. It can be very frustrating. It's very intense, very challenging, and pretty fun. There's a variety of game modes here. You have like a deathmatch, team deathmatch. There's a capture the swag, which you have to hold on to this item for as long as you can. There's also a skyball mode where you have to pretty much get a ball in your opponent's goal, that kind of thing. You also have single player missions, which take a variety of forms, like just taking out a whole bunch of opponents or winning a match with certain restrictions, a whole bunch of stuff. I had a hard time kind of getting into the swing of it, if you will. But once I started picking up the the feel of the game, I started really enjoying it. And it's a budget game. It's under $5. Usually it goes on sale for even less than that. So definitely one to check out if you're interested. Alright, Roof Rage. This was one of the biggest surprises for me in this whole video. This game probably feels the most like Smash Bros out of anything. It also is just one of the best titles in here, and I did not expect any of this, but I did not want to put it down. This one actually supports up to 8 players locally, or you can do 1v1 battles online. This one really has an impressive amount of content. It has a ton of different fighters you can choose from. Each one again has their own fighting style. They have their own weapons or use their own style of hand-to-hand combat. and they have really impressive movesets. Check out some of these movesets here. Lots of different stuff these characters can do. Each have their own kind of strengths, and it's just really cool. I mean, this looks very kind of low tech, very pixelated, old school, but at the same time it's not. There's so much detail in these stages and things. The animation I just feel is really fluid. It looks really cool for being so, retro looking. The character sprites are so small, but still they look awesome. I was really impressed by this thing. Man, arcade mode for single player is good. It can get really, really hard. I was playing on normal difficulty, and man, I didn't want to go down to easy, but I was stuck on normal, and at the same time, I was frustrated, but I didn't want to put it down because it was so much fun. So definitely, this is a hidden gem among hidden gems, man. Super underrated, unknown game, and so good. Check it out, Roof Rage. Alright, next up we have Ninja Showdown. Here's another retro-inspired game. It's one-hit kills. You play as a ninja, and you're battling against other ninjas. You can play with up to 4 players. You have all kinds of ninja moves like jumping off walls. You can use your sword. You can pick up shuriken and different weapons like guns and bombs and things. Several different game modes for multiplayer. A nice little variety of maps with different platform layouts and environments you can choose from. There's also a single player arcade mode, which is just okay, and you're gonna see mostly footage of that here. It doesn't look like Smash at all, so you might be wondering, why is this in the video? Looks like just a classic arcade game where you're just taking out waves of mindless enemies, and that's fair, but it's all about the multiplayer. That's where this game shines, and I wasn't able to capture any footage with any other people this time around, so just use your imagination. This is what the multiplayer battle mode looks like. Imagine there are 4 ninjas battling it out. It's pretty fun, it's pretty hectic, very bloody, very simple game, but super fast paced and challenging. Again, a very unknown game. It's only a few bucks. Check it out. But only if you have some friends to play it with. Okay, next up is Mystic Melee. So Mystic Melee is a game that combines hand-to-hand fighting and magic. Up to 4 players can play this locally or online. You only have 6 characters to choose from, but each one has their own special abilities, magical attacks, and fighting styles. There's several different game modes in here. There's Deathmatch, King of the Hill, and a ball mode where you have to get the ball into your opponent's goal, as we've seen in another game earlier. I like the graphics, I like the music, I like the feel of the game. It might seem a little slow at first, but there are ways to get around a little bit faster once you get the feel for it and kind of develop a little bit more skill in some of the moves you can pull off. It also has a nice single player campaign, a story mode, and it combines battle stages with kind of speedrun platforming stages. So it mixes things up between a platform game and a fighting game in the single player mode. It seems this game was developed by a single person, which is super impressive. It's still in early access after many years, and I think development may have been abandoned. I'm not sure, but hey, this game's under $4. I was pretty impressed by it. And finally, we have Splash Blast Panic. I don't know if this is really a platform fighter, but there are platforms in it. The thing is, you're not really standing on them. You're wearing a jetpack and you're floating all around the screen, and you're shooting bullets at your opponents. They're water bullets though. Everything's based on water guns, and you have like water bombs and all these different water-based weapons. You've got a cool little selection of characters. Everybody basically plays the same, except for they have a unique special attack. Each character has a unique special attack that they can pull off when their special meter charges up. So I was playing as this ninja chick who can throw shuriken across the screen and just wipe out everybody in one hit. There's somebody else who can turn into like this giant rabid dog and just eat everyone else on the screen. It's pretty crazy. It's a hectic game. This plays like a twin stick shooter. You're using your left stick to move around in the air and the right stick to shoot your gun in any direction. There's a couple other nuances in there, but that's the gist of it. There's a bunch of different weapon pickups that appear on screen and you can pick them up, and some of them are super powerful. Others not quite so much, but It feels weird at first because the controls are very floaty as you're floating around the screen on your jetpack, and you have to deal with inertia and stuff like that, gravity, trying to bob and weave and dodge these bullets and knock your opponents off the screen. Much like Smash Bros, that's how you score. You have to not make your opponent's life meter run out, but you have to shove them off the screen with your bullets. You can play free-for-all or team-based games with up to 4 players locally. There's even this weird like tethered team mode where you and your teammate are kind of tethered together by this thing. I don't know, it's a little weird. It takes some getting used to. I guess you really gotta work together, and that could be fun or it could be frustrating. You just gotta try it out. If you don't have friends to play with, there is a pretty nice single player mode where you're just going from level to level, battling against harder and harder bots. You also have these mini game stages where you might have to navigate a maze and take out targets or avoid dying or just survive countless waves of little enemies. It can be a little frustrating, a little annoying, but for the most part I thought the single player mode was pretty fun. There's a big old boss at the end, and yeah, check it out. It's something a little bit different, very unique game. Again, it has that kind of feel of a game like Smash without being all that much like it, to be honest, but I'm putting it on the list anyways. And those were 10 more Smash Bros inspired games for PC and consoles. There's still a bunch more out there, and if this video does well, maybe we'll do a part 3. Let me know if you'd like to see that. Thank you for watching today. You have a good one. I will see you next time.